We'll be the first company to integrate AI on the aircraft.
You were the first.
As the first Black woman to earn a doctorate in electrical and computer engineering at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. But also, I always thought that to have done that in 2015 is almost embarrassing that it took that long. And I made it my duty at that point to ensure that I wouldn't be the last.
But I also feel that today, in this era of AI, in this era of constant change, I personally feel it gives us, all of us, an opportunity to test those edges in anywhere we want to go.
The driver has always been, how do I make a positive impact on the world and also find challenging problems to solve?
Do you see academia evolving as well and the future of education? Where do you see some of this future coming in for the next generation?
I hope we never lose is the human connection.
I'm so excited for everyone to listen to this conversation with Dr. Yemaya Bordain. A known trailblazer, not only in the community, but in the tech sector, she has always been on the edge of what is next. In our conversation, we not only talk about her story, but why it's so important today to be those trailblazers in our community, in our work, and in our families. Please enjoy this inspiring conversation with Dr. Yemaya Bordain. Welcome to the Future Human Experience podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rodriguez. I am so excited to have a fellow friend, a trailblazer in the work that she's been leading, Dr. Yemaya Bordain. Welcome to the Future Human Experience podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I am so excited to be here because I'm like, he's getting all of these cool people. I'm glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, Yemaya, but thank you so much. What has connected us has been our passion in the tech sector. But more importantly, your story. When we first met, I had a chance to learn a little bit more your story. So I'm excited to have a conversation a little bit more about how you become this trailblazer today. But more importantly, your inspiration for so many others to be a trailblazer in the work that they get to do. And so I'm very excited to have this conversation. With that said, Yemaya, tell us a little bit more about not only the work that you get to do today, but what has been driving you to do this work on the edge of technology, I call it.
My background, I'm currently Chief Commercial Officer and President of the Americas at a company called Daedalean. Okay. And what we do is we enable reduction of pilot workload and reduction of cost and enhancement of operations and operational efficiency through AI. Wow. So we'll be the first company to integrate AI on the aircraft. We're super excited about that. We've been working through it for many years. We are 2.5 audits down of 4 major ones, and we're looking forward to making history. But what brought me here into aerospace, I've been in aerospace for quite a bit. While I was in grad school, my undergrad is in electrical engineering, master's in computer science. Absolutely hated it. This is a world where everybody wanted to work for Google when I was in graduate school. And so I thought, okay, I need to get a computer science degree, and didn't love it. And so I decided to move forward and get a doctorate in electrical and computer engineering. And I chose an area that was as physics as you could possibly get without being a physicist. And that turned out to be semiconductor device physics. So, that was fun. But during that journey, I worked in a material science lab and developed high performance composites in manufacturing composites for aircraft. Wow. And after getting my doctorate, it made no sense but to go to Intel. I went to Illinois, and Illinois is the place where Jack Kilby, who's the co-inventor of the integrated circuit, went. It's also where John Bordain, the co-inventor of the transistor, went and taught after he invented the transistor at Bell Labs. And started at Intel. I went to the business unit and found myself back in a passion of the embedded military, aerospace, and government business. And so I was working in computing for embedded computing in safety critical avionics, and I started a safety critical avionics offering at Intel, first as an engineer, but then moving on to the business side and capturing our first clients there, and then going into hardcore sales, the dark side, the way dark side, from an engineer into sales, and found myself there. And so really enjoyed that. And as part of that work, I started technically consulting Daedalean, the co-founders, on integrating multi-core processors in their systems. And I thought that they were crazy to want to integrate AI. I mean, we were already 20 years past multi-core processors, going into client computers and data centers, and still, 20 years later, they hadn't been on aircraft in safe systems. This is how long it takes to ensure that these things, new technology, to integrate new technology on aircraft in safe systems. And I thought, how do you think you're ever going to get AI? Like, this is going to be a 40-year venture, but eventually that vision caught on to me. And I could not resist, and so I was so grateful to go and join Daedalean on this journey. And so it's been great. We're now, last week we announced that we're going to be acquired. I'm really excited about that, but also just a wonderful journey in continuing to blaze trails.
Yes. So, Yemaya, I mean, that's a wonderful way of recapping kind of your journey through this. But as you were navigating some of that journey, you were also put in these situations that there were barriers for you to navigate through, right? You shared that you went to, is it the University of Illinois?
At Urbana-Champaign.
Urbana-Champaign. You were the first in so many ways in that in that school. Tell us a little bit more about that experience of the good, bad, and ugly of being the first as you were navigating your doctorate in that school.
Oh my goodness. It's still today, when you just reminded me that I was the first, it gives me chills of, maybe part PTSD of the experience, but also I always thought that to have done that in 2015 is almost embarrassing that it took that long. But yes, I was the first Black woman to earn a doctorate in electrical and computer engineering at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, the same department of John Bardeen and Jack Kilby. And that journey was one that there were awful moments. And sometimes it's you're a grad student in electrical engineering, right? It's going to be awful anyway for most. But my undergrad and my master's was at Clark Atlanta University. And I'm so grateful for that, because at Clark Atlanta University, I went to a HBCU, and your faculty, they become your aunts and uncles. They're family, right? They put you through heck. They can be hard on you, but they're also incredibly gentle. And more importantly, they maintain that high standard of achievement. And so my first semester at Clark Atlanta, I was in an intro to engineering class, and I want to say a month into it, I was sitting in class. I was an extremely studious person, and faculty member looked at me and said, "You're going to get a PhD." And I didn't know that a doctor could be an engineer. At that time, I'm like, I don't understand this concept. I thought a doctor is a physician. And he said that to me. And at that point, the entire department rallied around this goal of ensuring that my academic journey would be one that each class would lead into the next of high achievement. I would go through myself and a small group of other students that were going to get PhDs in the future. We went through a very unique experience of even higher standards, even higher goals that were set for us. It wasn't okay for any one of us to ever get a C. It really wasn't okay for us to get Bs. And in cases that we found ourselves in deep trouble, and we were maybe on our way to get a D, that class would be deferred, and we would spend the entire summer every single day in the office of a faculty member going through the textbooks one by one and solving every single problem and effectively retaking the entire class until we earned the degree that we needed.
Wow.
And so when I went to Illinois, I was shocked that this was not the same experience.
Oh, wow.
Instead of my being able to walk into any faculty member's office and say, I need help, and they would stop everything and say, let's go. I remember going to office hours of one faculty member's, and I was a bit lost in the class. And I showed up at office hours, and he looked at me and said, why are you here? And I looked at the time and was like, oh my gosh, I think I got maybe I got the time wrong. And he said, no, it is office hours, but why are you here?
Oh my God. Wow. So the environment was very different.
It was a very different environment. It was the opposite of supportive.
Wow.
And so my first year, my first semester, I was pregnant with my first child.
Wow.
And it was an absolute struggle taking these advanced classes. And I was so lucky that I had my faculty members that from Clark Atlanta who stood by, and there was one faculty member, Dr. Kofi Boda. I mean, till this day, he's a grandpa to my children.
Yeah.
He taught me linear algebra and the fundamentals of semiconductors and quantum mechanics, just so that I could take those classes. But I was certain that I would not get through that experience. In fact, to take the qualifying exam, that exam is how you go from being a graduate student to a PhD candidate.
Mhm.
I made a deal with him. And I said, look, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to be able to finish this degree. And so I'll take the qualifying exam. If I fail, I'll take a master's and I will just quit. I'll quit the program and I'll go and get a job. And he said, sure, but you have to drop every single thing. You need to study very hard every single day. You're working on preparing for it, and give this your all. And I said, okay, that's our deal. And I did exactly that. 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours a day. I was locked in an office and I was studying for a qual. And to my surprise, not only did I pass, but I was in the top 5 students that passed the qual. Yeah. And at this time, I had no clue. Still, I had no clue that I would be the first. No one had ever told me this. And I was so in the weeds of just how difficult it was. And 2 experiences happened that turned grad school around for me. One was that I passed, and that felt incredibly rewarding. And it was the first time that I felt that, oh my gosh, if only I can focus and I have the resources that I need, I can do this. The other was that one of the faculty members that was on my qual committee, he was the committee chair of my qual. And this is 3 faculty members that are drilling you on the board. You're on the board, you're writing equations, and you are deriving the density of states of silicon from the ground up. And, it's absolutely grueling. And after I'd gotten the news that I had passed, I was walking down the quad, and I saw him. I walked past him and I said, "Hi, Professor Eden. Thanks so much. I got the news that I passed." And he stopped me and he said, and he's this famous professor. He's the first one. He created like the first dozen plasmas that went into plasma TVs.
Oh, wow.
Very well known in academia. And he said, "I have to stop you." And he said, "I need to shake your hand." He said, "I couldn't tell you in that moment how well you did." And what he said still moves me. He said, "You are an angel to this university, and you deserve to be here." And it melted me. And it was the first time that it was like a light switch. That validation was a light switch. Like, oh my goodness, wow. And suddenly for the rest of the experience, I was so relaxed, and I was like, oh, all I have to do is read the book, or all I have to do is find the right resource. And soon after that, one of the faculty members who had been there for a long time, he was the second Black faculty member in the department, he came and found me. And he said, you know, you will be the first woman to do this. And I thought to myself, what? What are you talking about? This is going to be 2015. How could this be? You'll be the first one. And I made it my duty at that point to ensure that I wouldn't be the last. So I spent the next 3 years starting an organization to support the other students in the department and across the entire Department of Engineering, and help them when they were melting down at midnight. And, you know, and getting up out of my bed and at 1 o'clock in the morning, getting to campus and reminding them that they could do it as well.
Yeah.
And so I recruited the next 3 Black women.
Wow.
And I was grateful within the next, I think, 7 years, all 3 of them then graduated with their doctorates in our department.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yemaya, thank you so much for sharing that story. And of course, I've heard that story several times and I still get emotional listening to it. Because the way I think about that story, I think everyone could find those moments in our lives, right? That either someone sees us, someone validates us, someone gives us that inspiration to keep moving forward. But I love how you even look back at that moment, right? So even though today, as you're trailblazing and the work that you get to do, you know, you're moving an entire industry into this autonomous era as well. Tell us a little bit more about why is that important for you to always be on the edge of doing something new? Because you could have been the first and you could have just said, hey, you know what, that's it, I'm done. And maybe, yes, you're right, you bring the next 3 along, but okay, it's cool. I could, you know, I don't need to test the edges anymore. But what you have done is that you have continued to test the edges. And that's been a personal inspiration for me, because I feel like that's the work that I get to do today is, yeah, I'll leave my comfort zone and go into these different areas. But I also feel that today, in this era of AI, in this era of constant change, I personally feel it gives us, all of us, an opportunity to test those edges in anywhere we want to go. And yes, today I could trailblaze on being the first person to graduate here, or I could be the first in my family to graduate there, but I could be also a first in something else. Can you share with us a little bit more about what has been some of those lessons now, reflecting back, even maybe reflecting back even now as a mother, going back into the next generation? Because I know we both share that passion about the next generation, about making sure they feel not only seen, but that they also feel that they could also be the first in whatever they decide to do.
You know, I think being the first, in so many cases, it's been more of a consequence that I hadn't recognized. It hasn't necessarily been the driver. The driver has always been, how do I make an impact, on a positive impact on the world? How do I make a positive impact on my family? How do I role model certain behavior for others? And then somehow, and also find challenging problems to solve. It's always kind of driven by helping people and solving challenging problems. And then you kind of go and do it without the pressure of, I have to be the first, and not having that driver. Instead, you want to do the right thing, and you want to be a role model to others, and you want to make a positive impact on the world and the people around you.
Wow.
And you do it, and then you turn around and you say, I was the first.
Yeah.
And you do, and I think it happens in cycles.
Sure.
In that way, every single time you kind of turn around and you reflect on it. And then you say, what's a more challenging problem? But also, in doing so, how do I pull people behind me? How do I ensure that I'm dragging folks along with me and around me and behind me, and I'm getting them that much closer to them being the first in
and whatever
something else, whatever they decide to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just about building the ladders. It's about making sure you're helping people navigate those ladders, bringing them along on those ladders. Jemaya, with that said, tell us a little bit more about where do you see the future of this era that we're in this AI era? How do you see it impacting not only the next generation, but I mean, so much that of your journey was also intertwined with the evolution of academia. Do you see academia evolving as well, and the future of education? Where do you see some of this future coming in for the next generation?
I see, and I've heard this and I'll quote it confidently, AI is the next internet, and the impact I think will be even more profound.
Mm.
The reason for that is AI is the first technology, or the first time that technology acts as an agent to humans. Technology has always been merely a tool, one that reduces our time, one that makes life easier, one that enhances our experiences. And suddenly AI, yes, the outcome will be the same, but it's an agent on behalf of us now.
Mm.
And the question is, what do we do with that? I think in the next maybe 2 years, of course, we'll still be trying to wrap our arms around what will we do with this. But in 5 years, in 10 years, evolutionarily, we're at the inchworm. But in 5 and 10 years, I heard Yuval Harari
Yeah.
say, we'll have the T-Rex of AI, then what?
Mm.
And this is a world that is incredibly exciting
Yeah.
and quite possibly terrifying. We don't know what's on the
Yeah.
other side of this.
Yeah.
But I think what I hope we never lose is the human connection, our ability to see in each other that make friends and not just friends that we text with, but friendship.
Yes. Yeah.
Build friendship,
Yeah.
build communities,
Yeah.
build people,
Yes.
and continue to use it to support
Yeah.
the best in the growth and the abundance of humanity.
Oh my gosh, Ron, thank you so much. And I think our relationship is an example of that too. I mean, we've known each other
Absolutely.
since our days at Intel. We've done different projects, and sometimes we've called on each other, right, for support on that. But you're right. I think it comes back to how we invested in not only the relationships, but in the impact that we want to make. How we shared that vulnerability even with each other, right?
That's right.
It was just almost 10 years ago when we did Oakland. And
Yes.
and I gave you a phone call. I'm like, Jemaya, can you fly out here to California and spend
Yes.
some time with our female students that were the first engineering students and that were doing the project in high school? And you were gracious enough and said, Eric, I got it, right? I'll spend 2 days out there in California to go and do this work, right? But I think it goes back to that human piece, going back to that, right? Is if we didn't share that humanity and the passions that we cared about of making that impact in this space, one, I would have not known, okay, I know Jemaya would answer my phone if I had this ask. But two, I know you understood this project very well because I think you saw yourself in that work as well. And I think
Yes.
giving us those opportunities to get to know each other, have those human connections is, I would say today, much more of a premium experience than it was, 20, 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sitting down together, and instead of doing this through Zoom,
To Zoom, yeah.
this is a premium experience.
Oh my God, thank you for that,
Today,
Jemaya.
this is what I think that we should kind of be moving as a society to live for. Just sitting down and enjoying.
Oh my God. That means a lot.
I go to Europe a lot, and I still notice that if you go to many city centers, people still sit down and they're talking to each other the whole time with minimal access to or pulling out their phones and all that. And also you're forced to sit really, really, really closely to others, and that's normal for them. Versus here, right? Americans, we're like, you are in my bubble. But you
Sure.
make no friends that way.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
And you realize that I think in all of the traveling that I do, when people ask, what was it that you loved about it? It's always, I tell stories about the people that I met and their experiences and how interesting they are and what their stories are, and that I can't wait to see them again and hear about their children.
Yes. Jemaya, oh my God, thank you so much for validating this work that we've been doing with this podcast. Because when we came up with this idea almost a year and a half ago, one of the things that we wanted to do differently was we wanted to do this in person. And I was like, look, I know I'm confined sometimes to the Arizona area, and we're confined to making sure our schedules work. One day we'll take this on the road. I promise we'll take this on the road. But the idea was always to be in person, because we wanted to really authentically create that human experience. And thank you so much for recognizing that.
Absolutely.
That means the world to me. So Yemaya, I mean, thank you so much again for not only your story, but the impact that you want to make in this industry, but also where we're seeing where AI could go in the multitudes of ways. But if we go back to the work that you're doing today in the aviation space, where does AI play into this? I mean, I know there's a lot of work that's still happening in this, but what does the future look like now as certain AI tools become a normal in certain industries, especially in aviation?
Yeah, in aerospace and aviation, people often think, and we get aviators, we get aircraft developers, their knee-jerk reaction to AI being on an aircraft is, I don't want it touching the controls. And that thing is non-deterministic. But it comes from this notion that AI will replace humans on the aircraft. Both fortunately and unfortunately, it's a lot more boring than that in aviation, right? We have to establish, we have to meet high safety levels. The first, second, and third priority of aviation and aerospace is safety. And so we use AI to do boring things. We use it to help pilots to see where they otherwise wouldn't be able to see, to identify traffic, to identify wires so that helicopter pilots, search and rescue pilots don't fly into wires. The decision making and the, say, full autonomy in the future, we think that in the air transport that we're accustomed to, that you and your family fly on today, won't see that for a long time.
Yeah.
We think that there's a place for humans in aviation. Absolutely. Humans are still the very best at managing uncertainty. And so we use AI today in order to support pilots for things that are normal, that are repeated, things that are expected, and automating those.
Yeah.
So we know, for instance, autopilots, they've been around forever. And continuing to help pilots to focus on what's uncertain, and the uncertainties like Captain Sully and flying into a flock of birds, right? Wow. The system that we're developing now, we would like to believe that our system would identify that flock so that he would be able to make the best decision. Now, and maybe that decision turns out to be the same.
Correct.
So people often think, it's a misconception, but people often think that AI on the aircraft is this wrapper around the aircraft that gives the aircraft a brain and this central function. And that's not at all how we develop these systems. Instead, when we say AI on the aircraft, we're talking about individual functions, components, the building blocks, and they are surrounded on every side by conventional hardware and software. And we don't necessarily give any system on the airframe the license to just do what it wants to do. And so we don't break the process of aircraft development, and we don't break the process of aviation by integrating AI on it. And that being said, there are other parts of the market as a whole, such as drone delivery, where we might see that AI does a lot more and it plays a much bigger part at achieving full automation or autonomy.
Yeah. So Jemaya, I mean, we live in the Arizona area. We've seen Waymo kind of be a hit here. How has that either helped the conversation about, automation in certain other spaces? How has it kind of helped some of the clarity, and also some of the times maybe created some myths that are not real, which I think in some of them you're touching on. Where do you see the future of autonomy? Like drones, that was something that a great example of it. But what about for like vehicles in our day to day? Is that something that you're seeing that could possibly play out in the next few years as well?
Absolutely. There's this growing market, air taxi, to advance air mobility. And part of that is air taxis.
Wow.
And Waymo has supported that, particularly from a public trust perspective. There was a time where the Waymo the Waymo vehicles, they were driving all around the city, and there were people behind the wheel. For years, there were people behind the wheel. At first, those people were actually driving, and they were collecting data, and they were going around every single street and continuing to collect data. Where's this street here versus that? They were teaching the algorithms how to manage other traffic, how to manage paper bags or plastic bags that were, maybe drifting along the highway. And then at some point, they were reducing the drivers were driving less, but they were still sitting there. And when Waymo became operational, people would get in to your Waymo, and you thought that you were going to experience this amazing, transformative experience of no person being behind the wheel, all to find that, oh, there's a person behind the wheel. And that went on for a long time. But really what it did, though, as well, is it desensitized the public. There's still someone there. There's still someone that can intervene, a human that can intervene if the vehicle does something that is not right. There's still a human that can intervene and manage uncertainty. And so when the patrons would get in the back seat and there's a human there, at some point, humans are not driving there. They're just sitting there. They're not touching the wheel. It's all desensitizing humans, and we're able to see. More and more that, okay, the machine can do more and more. And that made it such that at the point that there was no human there, it was almost, for the first 3 minutes in the car, was it like, oh, this is amazing. And then it's just like, it's just driving.
No, I appreciate that. I had this idea when I have an 11-year-old. I know our kids are almost the same age, and someone would ask me, like, what is the one thing in the future you think your son would have something a little bit different? I was like, I don't think he's gonna have a driver's license. I don't think so. I mean, I think the driver's license is still probably in play in 5 years, but who knows? I mean, at the trend that we're going today, they're normalized, they're desensitized. As the next generation is desensitized on it. Oh yeah, Dad, there's a Waymo. Like, it's not that big a deal anymore, right? And it's just like you said, it's just driving. It's just a car is taking me from point A to point B. But Yemaya, again, just thank you so much for having this conversation with us. We like to do something really fun with our guests. We ask our guests to bring a surprise question. Like I said, we've known each other almost for over a decade now, or about a decade. I'm really interested to see what either curiosity you have about my work or a little bit more about me.
Absolutely. I keep, and Eric, you are the paragon for me of development, community development. And that's how we bonded. That's how we've worked together in the past. And now that as I continue to grow in my career, in my life, as my life my center of gravity shifts, I keep asking myself, what can I do to further develop the community? And so I ask, what do you do now? And how can I help? Oh my God. Thank you so much for that question. I think one of the most rewarding experiences that I have when I have a chance either to do these conversations or go to these conferences and share a little bit more of my story, I would say half of the conversations are nice because they're also about like, oh, what's their next gig? Or how can we hire you for a next gig? Which is nice for the business. But the other one has always been about like, hey, thank you for being you on the stage and talking about innovation from a cultural relevant perspective.
And so what that has helped me do is kind of help me understand that sometimes doing this work brings other along and bring other stories along is also very powerful. And I think what I learned on this journey about the community work was, before, when I had this corporate hat on, I was trying to always figure out how to bring the corporation onto the table, and represent the corporation. And what I've learned on this journey now that I'm doing this solo work has been like, no, it's always been about me doing this work into this. That yes, the corporation that comes in, don't get me wrong, that's great because they come in with some bigger bags than I have sometimes. But sometimes they want you and your perspective and your story to be there present. And so I think, and that could also feel very overwhelming because there's a lot of organizations that we would love to be supportive of and help. But that would be my response to that, was like, find those organizations, those handful of organizations that want Yemaya because of your story, not because of the place you work today. It's because of your journey. And I think that has been very helpful for me, is like, no, they're asking the 7th grade Eric that became passionate about technology to be in the room today and represent the other 7th graders that are trying to figure out what to do in their life next, right? And represent either their teacher or the classroom experience, or even my children, right? And so like, that's the way I try to approach this work now. And I've given myself that grace also. I was saying, like, it's okay that I'm not coming with a multi-billion-dollar company to the table, but I could be either just as valuable or more valuable because of the journey I've had. And I think everyone has that. And I think today, Yemaya, you have shared that with all of us. And so just thank you so much for your story, for your work, for your passion in this space, and for the continued impact you'll have in our communities and around the world. But Yemaya, today, how can people connect with you? How can people find you? Please let us know.
The easiest way is to go to my website, www.yemayabordain.com.
Awesome.
And if you scroll down to the bottom, you can find contact information, and that comes directly to me. And I always make myself available to mentoring people, always make myself available to supporting folks in their journey. So I'd love to hear from your audience.
Oh my God, Yemaya, thank you. And I will share this with everyone here. You hold yourself accountable to that too. I know sometimes we have met folks on our journeys too, say, hey, yeah, just reach out to me, we'll make it work. You do that, Yemaya. I've seen that. I've seen the people we've impacted. I've tried to role model that as well. I know sometimes, again, for the audience, it's hard for us to reach out to someone, especially, oh yeah, but she's not going to pay attention to me, or he's like, please do so. We are there for you and to be of service to your growth. If you have an ask, if you have a question, we'll always make time for that. So, Yemaya Bordain, thank you again for being part of the Future Human Experience.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. I'm inspired to hear that these conversations are resonating within our communities, our organizations, our companies, and our households all around the world. If you found this conversation to be valuable, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share it with someone else. I do believe that as the future gets much more digitized, it gives us an opportunity to be much more human as well. And these conversations are part of that journey. So if you're enjoying the content on this channel, please check out these videos. Thank you.